on executive social leadership. We're really happy to have you all here. We'll get started now, actually. So I'm going to share my screen. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate this. Hope to have a live and active conversation. Yes, 35 people online. Okay. Well, again, thanks all for joining. We're really excited to bring this all to you. My name is Matt Watley. I'm on our global digital team, Director of Digital Channel Strategy. I am joined here by Maddie Van Tassel, our Associate Director of Content Strategy. The two of us have come together to put this presentation together for you, really meant to open up a dialogue, a conversation around executives using social media, the value behind it, why we think it's so important, and 10 ways to get started and think about how our leadership can leverage the value of social media for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to, go into slideshow mode here. So you all should be able to see my screen. You're seeing that as a opposite. Swap displays here. How's that? Yeah, that looks good. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by opening it up to the group here. This topic actually came to us from a variety of different people throughout the organization in marketing. We've been hearing from a lot of people around why executives should be on social, how to get started, what they should be thinking about, and what they should do to plan for this. So before we even get into it, I'd love to hear from everyone here on the Zoom chat. Feel free to chime in via the chat or just to unmute yourself. Why do you think executives should be on social? Is there a benefit to that? We have Richard Loomis in the room here who might be able to offer up some ideas as well. So thank you, Richard.
To expand our influence and message to our social network.
Definitely. Expanding our influence.
Sorry for the problem.
Yeah. Influence is absolutely part of this. Anyone else? I'll pick on you. Not afraid to do it. Alora says people are better messengers than the organization. So true, so true. Yeah. I myself am much more inclined to follow the individual behind a brand or organization than the actual organization. I feel like I'm getting much more raw material information kind of behind the scenes. Anyone else? Oh, good. Mackenzie responded. To share thought leadership and unique perspectives on an issue or project. Totally. Positioning an executive as a thought leader can give the organization much more credibility. Yeah. Lane, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, these are all really good answers and so true. I mean, they're all spot on to what we think about when we think about executives on social, right? It helps increase trust. It improves our ability to be good messengers and steward the organization's positioning on things. It helps with earned media, helps build authenticity and credibility, and establishes a lot of that industry expertise. I'd also say that it deepens the relationship with staff, which might be more of an internal perspective, but I do think that I personally follow Sally Jewell on Twitter, and it's really insightful to just get a sense of what she's thinking about and talking about. That helps me understand where she's coming from as a leader and helps me kind of even just directionally understand where the organization is going. And then I'd also say once there is that established trust and credibility, those executives become their own thought leaders and can provide an additional mechanism for our marketing, right? They become a platform for us to share our message with a wider group of people. So all of these things are super important, super valuable. We were really excited to get a lot of interest and questions around how our marketing staff should help executives establish their presence on social. So we put together a deck here that we'd like to walk through, and I'm going to turn it over to Maddie to get us started.
Real quick, I'm noticing our slides are getting chopped off.
Hey guys, I think our slides are getting a little cut off. You can kind of see them. So weird, right? Okay, so just real quick.
Plug it.
Oh. Just give us 1 sec.
Yeah, no, that's good.
That looks better? Okay. All right. Cool. Hey guys, Maddie Van Tassel here, and I'm going to kick us off with our agenda and walk you through a couple of our tips. So we formatted this presentation into 10 steps for social leadership, because who doesn't love a listicle? And hopefully these 10 steps will kind of make sense to you as a marketing person, something you can bring to your executives or senior leaders. We welcome questions throughout. We have the Zoom chat open. You can unmute yourself, and then we'll save some time at the end. And I just wanted to caveat, we might be saying executives, we might be saying CEOs, I tend to say senior leaders. This presentation is purposefully designed for any and all of the above: state directors, managing directors, C-suite, anybody that has sort of that thought leadership position. So we're hoping this applies to a lot of you, depending on where you sit in the organization. Okay. First and foremost, let's talk tip number 1, understand the social opportunity. We've already mentioned that people tend to connect with people and not brands. Obviously, our brand social media handles are very valuable for our business goals, but when it comes to that interaction and engagement, that's happening a lot on the person-to-person level. Today's top leaders are social leaders. If you look a CEO up, they're going to have a Twitter handle. It's just become commonplace. I can remember like a few years ago at TNC having to make the case to some of our managing directors of our SEA priorities of why they needed to be on Twitter. And now I feel like we've kind of skipped over that hurdle, and now everybody wants a piece of it. But everybody might not be doing the best that they can be doing with it. So this is a huge opportunity for our executive team and our senior leaders to hop in there and really do a good job. I wanted to include an example here of John Legere, the CEO of T-Mobile. He might be one of the most social CEOs out there these days. He's been quoted as saying he does social media like the first second he wakes up in the morning. And we're not suggesting that your leaders need to be doing that. He has a huge, massive following, and we're not suggesting that either. We want to right-size it for what's manageable for the person, and we want to help you set goals, which is tip number 2, set goals. I think the biggest mistake I've seen in years of counseling our executives is the thing they want, the ultimate goal they have is to get followers. How do I get more followers on my Twitter handle? How do I get more connections on LinkedIn? And that's a valuable goal to have, but there are so much more meaningful goals to being active on social. The follower count will follow if you're doing the right, if you're putting out the right content and you're achieving the right strategies. And so this slide, or this tip, is meant to help you set goals. And we talked about a few kind of in that icebreaker at the beginning. But these are just a few suggestions I came up with. Why would a leader be social? To bolster your personal reputation, leadership, or expertise. Maybe you're someone who attends a lot of conferences or has a lot of speaking engagements. Or maybe you're a media spokesperson. This is a great chance to bolster your reputation. Clearly, to advance the mission of TNC, we can use our organizational handles to promote new content, but our executives sharing that offers an extra level of credibility and personal perspective. And then engaging target audiences while reaching new ones. This is often a great goal for people to have to expand their networks on Twitter and LinkedIn, engage with members, partners, peers, foundations. The list can be long and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So I encourage you to help your senior leaders think about who their target audiences are and how you can reach those people rather than just reaching the masses. And then another good goal is connecting with other thought leaders and industry experts. There's so much dialogue and engagement that happens on Twitter. And if you're speaking peer-to-peer with someone else in kind of that public forum, it's pretty cool to see what other engagement follows from those thought leader type of conversations. So those were just a few goals. Wasn't sure if there were any others. Maybe you guys have heard some from where you sit about state director saying they really want to do X on social. I'll take a moment to pause real quick and see if there are any other goals. Let's see here. Oh, awesome, you guys are chatting. Okay. It can lead to an interview or otherwise being included in an article. Exactly, Lindsay. The reporters are all about Twitter and always researching. Spokespeople, that makes a lot of sense. And then Mackenzie also echoed the media relations side of things, making connections with journalists. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna keep switching back and forth.
Keep you on your toes. Okay. Quick shout out to Lindsay for adding the SEO tip serendipitously into this. Always good to build in other publications, adding links to nature.org. That helps SEO. Please do that. Okay, so your executive or leader has decided they're ready to jump in headfirst to social. Really kind of once you've established the opportunity and started thinking about what kind of profile you want to create, it's time to get into it and build your profile. This is such a critical and important step. It is oftentimes the first impression we set with our target audience, the people that we're expecting to cultivate a community around and be participating in a conversation online. They're going to go to your profile and want to get a sense of who you are as a person. This takes some really clever writing and some important decision-making around photography and images to use and things like that. So, you know, there's no secret sauce to this, no perfect mix, but we do have some general ingredients of what makes up a good profile. And this is true of all our executives and leaders, but it's also true for the organization as well, right? We want links to the website, of course. We want to be driving people to a place where they can learn more about the individual. Clear headshots to get a sense of who the person is. Also pairing that with a complementary cover photo. Those are things that I think are often overlooked. But again, when that reporter or journalist is going and doing their homework and digging into a story and finds you, they're going to want to see what you're talking about, where to find more information about you and things like that. So make sure you get those photos right and you've got links to the website. Your bio is critical, right? And this is a delicate balance of professional and personal. Professional in that you want to establish what you are a thought leader in, and personal in verifying that you are not a robot. What people don't want to see is just a rehash of what the brand or organization is saying. They want, again, that added layer, that contextual kind of perspective that helps people understand what TNC is doing or the decisions that we're making or our point of view on certain issues and things like that. And then it's all about starting to build up your profile with foundational content gives people some context of what they should expect to see. And then once you've done that, it's a matter of pinning that most relevant and important content up top. Pinning that content allows us to keep a message at the very top of a profile. It's the first thing that a person would see when digging into a Twitter or LinkedIn profile. So just a couple examples of some really good profiles that we have uncovered from some leaders online, on social. We have Jasmine Crow, the CEO at Gooder Company. Just a really well-crafted bio, gives a good sense of what she does, where she works, and also gives some context about what she's passionate for, right? Which is really helpful, gives us a good sense of what we can expect, and then also offers a link to more info about her. And then we have Joanne Jenkins, the CEO of AARP. I really like this example because not only is she establishing herself as the CEO of a major organization, she's also introducing this hashtag, which is widely used by AARP, called Disrupt Aging. It's a long-standing campaign that they've established that signals that she's an active participant in this community, and that's where she's focusing her time and attention. Both are just really strong examples of well-branded bios and profile pages.
So now we have a quick question.
Yeah.
And
Megan, I remember this too. A few years ago, probably more than a few, we were all, as employees, advised to add a disclaimer to our bios that was like, yeah, views are my own or tweets are my own, and she's asking if that's still required of employees at TNC.
I think that SOP probably needs a closer look. I think maybe at the staff level, it's probably a good idea to have that disclaimer available, but I would expect for an executive that's leveraging social specifically for building their own personal brand, but also messaging for the organization, maybe they have some flexibility there.
Yeah. I think I would say,
Becky has some thoughts.
Becky's out.
Come in from the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
Everybody. I would say you should totally follow your SOP as it is stated currently. But if it's part of our actual business strategy to develop this social media strategy and it's part of their job, then absolutely that's obviously something that TNC is actively sponsoring and putting labor hours towards. But until we do update the SOP, I would say tweets are my own or whatever.
Yeah.
All right, good to see you guys.
Thank you, Becky. Takes a village. Okay. Hope that answers the question.
yes, she says thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. So just a couple, one individual that I'm particularly fond of, that I think is a good representation of what we just walked through was the co-founder of Headspace, Andy Puddicombe. His Twitter feed is worth exploring to get a good sense of what I think makes up a good executive on social. In this first example here, you're not seeing this. On this first example here, I love the pinned tweet, and it feels a little bit different than I think what we've talked about, but it gives me a really good sense of what the Headspace brand is all about. Headspace, as many of you probably know, is an app for meditation. And the pinned tweet that he has there kind of like really encapsulates the positioning, the voice, the tone of what Headspace is all about, right? It kind of almost puts me in that space of understanding what his business is about and what he's trying to achieve there. So it doesn't drive you anywhere per se, but it helps kind of establish a sense of purpose for what he's working towards with Headspace. And then we talked a lot about foundational brand content. He is leveraging his own social platform to distribute out messages from the brand itself. So we have in this middle example, a live meditation session that Headspace does often. This is a tweet that I would expect is probably on the Headspace Twitter profile as well, but again, when you get it from someone like the CEO of the organization, there's that added personal touch, which I think helps go a long way. And then foreshadowing what we'll get into later, Andy does a super good job of thoughtful engagements. These are the responses that all social media marketers dream for, which is the really strong endorsement from someone in the community. In this case, the person said that Headspace totally changed his life, and that if he ever met Andy, he'd want to shake his hand and say thank you. And so Andy came back with this really thoughtful response and said, thanks for being part of the community and consider it shaken. It's just a really, like, you know, that took 2 minutes of his time, but I think establishes such goodwill and signals how much he cares about his community and the people that are using his product. Okay, moving on. So you've established your bio, your profile looks good, you're starting to seed your account with some of that foundational content we've talked about. The next step is super important as well, which is making sure you're following smart and engaging people. And this is, again, a really delicate balance of threading the needle and making sure you're following all of the people within the space you want to be an active part of the community with. You know, for TNC, it's likely those CEOs and TNC colleagues, it's our partners and peers, it's other thought leaders in conservation, it's your local media, it's things like that. But I would also argue that a good part of this is just making sure you're following things that you care about personally and making sure those are part of your follower base as well. When you do that, obviously that signals to the person that you're following that you're out there, you're part of this, you're posting content on a regular basis, you're putting your message out there, and hopefully they're reciprocating by following back. This helps build up that community online that we're hoping to achieve. Totally recognize this is a hard place to jump into, so our team took the effort to give you 2 places to go start. So we have 2 Twitter lists that are available for you to check into. They are lists that have the Twitter profiles for our executive team and the state directors that are currently on Twitter right now. So we can put a link to that in the chat for you all to see. They're also on the TNC Global Twitter handle as well, so you can find them there. That should just give you a good sense of what state directors are currently doing on Twitter and the executive team, and a good place to start following them for more information. In this example here that we included, this is from Indra Nugi. She is the former CEO of Pepsi. I just really like this example because it's so genuine and personal. This is a kind of a touching post that talks about her journey as someone who came from South Asia as an immigrant to the US and now being part of the Smithsonian and just taking a moment to embrace her own journey as part of the American story. And, you know, and I just thought like this was a really good inside look into an individual that you wouldn't find in a press release or on the Pepsi website, right? This is kind of that personal look at an individual, which is, helps build, again, a better picture of who that person is and the company they work for. Some messages, maybe.
Probably.
Yes, you got it. Okay. So just one more note to kind of drive this home. We have 3 different instances of 3 different profiles of individuals who are all kind of thought leaders in their own way, but have a very different approach to who they follow and how many people they follow. So I've cheated a little bit, but it's just to illustrate the example here. In our first example, we have Seth Godin, an author, longtime thinker around the internet and culture and things like that. In this case, he's following 2 people, but has 706,000 followers. In our second example, we have Jay Dare, who is following 29,000 people and has 277,000 people. And then finally, in our third example, we have the CEO of Swell Bottle, Sarah Kaus, who has 491 followers, and I'm sorry, who's following 491 people and following, 491 people that she's following, and is 2,752 people that are following her. So very different cases, and I'll walk through them. In the first example, by only following 2 people, this signals to the person looking at this that this is a one-way communication. This is a broadcast channel. This person logging on is not here for dialogue. They're not following anyone. They're not seeing any of those messages from the people that are part of the community that they're building. This is more of just like a shouting out into the Twitter, which we all know is not a healthy space to be in. In scenario 2, we see that this influencer is following 29,000 people. And that's just the kind of the polar opposite. It's just such a noisy space that there's no possible way you could have a productive conversation with anyone, really, because it's just kind of a fire hose. You're just seeing too much. It's moving too fast. There's no possible way you could have thoughtful responses to people and follow a dialogue that's happening online because it's just too noisy. You're following too many people. But the third example of Sarah, the CEO of Swell Bottle, I think is kind of a much more well-balanced approach to the following versus follower ratio. And it's kind of like the Goldilocks effect here, where it's like not too many and not too few. You really have to make sure you're curating really kind of specific and bespoke kind of approach to who the individuals you follow, because that really establishes the type of dialogue you'll hope to be part of in social. Now, back to Maddie.
Great. Okay, so our next tip is listen and learn. I think a lot of times people think, okay, my profile's up to date, I've gotten content out there, I'm following people, let's start tweeting all the time. But my advice is to first take a step back and to really watch conversations happen a little bit. It's like getting training wheels on a bike. You kind of want to get a feel for the mechanics and see what your friends are doing. And so we want to recommend this listen and learn approach. And that's just as simple as signing into Twitter or LinkedIn daily, weekly, and committing to seeing what topics are trending. How are people using hashtags in your industry? What are your peers talking about right now? And get a feel for even like the art of a good tweet. Are people sharing links a lot? Are people sharing videos? And trying to get a sense of what some of your peers are doing to help influence and inspire what you're ultimately going to push out there. And the other sneaky thing about this tip is it gets you in the habit of signing in more regularly when you don't just have something that you want to tweet about. So I'm guilty of it. I'll open up Twitter and I'll want to push out my tweet, and I'm there for that. It's a little self-serving, but if I commit to kind of using it every so often, I can see what else is happening and join existing conversations or reply to people and not make it so much about what I want to put out through my megaphone that day. So I included just a quick screenshot here on the right. These were 2 tweets that were in my own Twitter feed on any given day, and I just wanted to include them as inspiration for your own content. So the first is Governor Jay Inslee is sharing an article. So how often do we all share articles and we maybe just copy and paste the headline of the article? It's the easier avenue, but Jay has found a way of adding his own kind of succinct, powerful messaging. I sound like a broken record, but can we stop breaking climate records? And so it's urgent, passionate. He's even got like a play on words in there. He's sharing a Washington Post article, so it's not something that he or his office has put together, and he's just responding to something in the news. I thought that was really well done. And then right below it was another tweet that gave me a lot of inspiration if I were in that listen and learn mode from Cristiana Figueres, who's the former executive secretary of UNFCCC. That's a mouthful. And she's really a thought leader in the climate space, and she's become a public speaker. She's passionate about women's rights, and so here she is sharing BBC's tweet about her upcoming speaking engagement, using a hashtag and whatnot. So it's not just her saying, hey, I'm going to be talking on this. She's leveraging another handle's promotion of it and adding her 2 cents. So just by kind of watching my feed and seeing what others are doing, I'm getting ideas for my own feed. Okay, and then the next tip, develop a voice. So I think this one is kind of a fun one. It gives you a chance to reflect on your own personality and trying to bring that to life through social. So think of some of your favorite people that you follow on any social channel. They probably have a really distinct voice, tone. Maybe it's humorous, maybe it's silly, maybe it's passionate, and they don't really waver from it because it's true and authentic to who they are. It's probably how they would talk in everyday life too. That's what we're trying to achieve here. Something that's authentic to you, that doesn't sound like a brand voice or like your marketing colleague wrote it for you. It really sounds true to yourself. So we should think about what makes sense for you. I included a example of Hugh Possingham, TNC's chief scientist. If you look at Hugh's feed, he speaks with a lot of passion, urgency. Sometimes he's a little controversial. He always backs it up with his authority. So I think that's what keeps him from going off the rails. And this example is he's sharing a piece that he was quoted in with the quote, "If now is not the time to talk about climate change, when is?" So I think that's just such a nice, urgent, passionate line. And if you look at his feed, he really sticks with that personality. Let's see here, we have another slide. So a little bit more on voice. We talked about being authentic. The other key when it comes to voice is being timely. So Twitter is where we go for in-the-moment reactions on things in the news or things we're seeing around us externally. And sometimes we get in the habit of taking too long to maybe respond to something or join a conversation. We kind of wait till the next day and the moment has passed. So if you can kind of pair the authenticity with timeliness, that is really a wonderful spot to be in social media, to bolster that engagement rate, get more conversations happening, and not seeming like you're late to the party on a certain timely trending topic. And then finally, when it comes to voice, be patient. It takes time. You might be a certain way when you talk with someone, but typing that out in certain social messages can be kind of hard. So just be patient that it takes time. The more you use the platforms and listen and watch, test and learn, it'll come more easily. And then we've included this kind of, I've described it as the holy grail Venn diagram of when sometimes your voice and content can align. And right in the middle of all of that, that's the holy grail of when you can talk about your local conservation work, whether it's in your state or maybe it's within your SDA strategy, and you can combine it with a little TNC messaging and put in that passionate personal take. When you can bring all of those things together in your social posts and in your feed, that really gives your followers something that they want to respond to and keep coming back to. Cool, okay, just checking the chat. Back to you.
Okay, so Maddie gave us some good guidance on the type of content that we should be thinking about posting. The next question you might have is, well, how much content should I be putting out there? And I think the way to frame this is really a question of quality over quantity. For these more personal accounts we want to make sure that the quality of the content is the most important part of this rather than the number of posts. On an organization handle like our TNC Global channel, it's important for us to have a regular cadence, consistently posting once, twice, 3 times a day on certain channels. That's important on a brand handle, but on a personal one, you want to make sure that that quality remains paramount. But it should also just be active. I think the worst thing that we see is an executive or a leader starting up a social channel, being passionate about it for a couple months and then letting it go dormant. And then that really has the inverse effect of what you started with, which is someone that's totally bailed on social, signals a lack of interest, a lack of being able to commit to the time, and which is a lot for something like this. But you could think about, leveraging what we talked about, what Maddie talked about earlier, and making sure you're posting 3 times a week is a good baseline, right? Like, find a way to inject some of that TNC messaging, some of the conservation work or SCA priority work that you're focused on, and then a bit of the personal anecdotes help establish kind of a good framework for the executives to be thinking about on social. And then we include a note on don't delete and ignoring the haters and negativity. I think we could do an entire session on this third bullet here. The point is, you really have to establish and verify the credibility of a post before you of someone before you engage with them. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence and making sure that the conversation that you're about to get into leads itself to a productive, healthy discussion. Twitter and social can easily go down a dark path, a rabbit hole that doesn't lead to anything productive. So making sure you're not ignoring the haters, and you don't want to certainly delete anything that gets potentially controversial, but making sure you're engaging in the right ways that lend itself to good, constructive conversation. Another quick example from Maria Damanaki, just a really great photo of her colleagues and partners at an event, just giving kind of a kudos and sharing what a great week that she had at a specific event with her team here. You can tell this is straight from the camera, not taken by a professional photographer. There's a lot of authenticity around what's not actually said, and the fact that she's tagging the people that she's with signals that she's caring about them and being wants to share the great work that they're all doing together. So lots of good ideas. If you're thinking about where to start and what kind of content to post, there's really no shortage. And you could almost think of this as kind of a menu of options to pick from throughout the week to build out a social profile for a leader. We've covered a lot of these already. Content from publishers out there in the media that are covering the issues that our executives care about, conservation news, posting highlights from specific speaking engagements or events. Again, we started this by talking about building goodwill among staff, so thanking employees and partners and peers and things like that certainly goes a long way in showing gratitude for the organization. Again, once you've got that profile established and foundational content set, sharing TNC's top stories can be a great way to continue building a good reputation for the organization. And then, of course, adding in those personal life anecdotes, those seem like the easiest ones to overlook, but I think they go a long way in helping to help us learn more about the individual and find out what they care about, things like that. It's just interesting slice of life that we get. So engagement, I think, to me, engagement for an executive is priority number one. I think this is the hardest thing to do to get right, but also where all of the power lies and the benefit and value of being on social lies in engagement. From my perspective, I think engagement is even more important than posting original content. This is really where a leader can establish themselves as a meaningful and thoughtful contributor to a dialogue online. So engagement is critical, and making sure you're engaging in the right conversations can be a challenging thing to do, but it helps us connect and develop relationships with our audience. So I think it's easy for people to say, I want to build up my follower base, or I just want to get my message out there. But really what you're doing is opening yourself up to respond and engage with people that might have questions or comments or feedback for you. And I think that's really, the comments, you know, it's tricky of a place to navigate, can be really where the thought leadership starts, right? So people that are responding to you are taking time out of their day. You know, they've scrolled past a number of tweets or social posts and have stopped on your content and have taken the time to read it, think about it, and respond. And from my perspective, you know, that warrants a response back, a like, retweet, a mention. You can decide what the right appropriate response is, but that certainly signals to the community that you're not just there broadcasting a message, you're there trying to be kind of a good contributor to the conversation online. This is like, you know, early days social media. This is kind of like where it all started, right? That was really kind of the aha moment for a lot of us when we first started in social. We talked about this. Knowing when to reply is super important. It also gets very complicated. Gauging credibility is important, and we can certainly help sort through that and find the right message too. Just a quick example to show Latrice leveraging an event, as we talked about before, to be an active contributor to a conversation, right? So she knows that the event that she's attending will be widely attended, and so she is asking, will I see you there? Is anyone attending? And Maddie told me that a lot of people actually responded saying that they'd be there. And it's just a really great way of being, again, like an active participant for the event and in social, and helps build up a good network. So really fun, good example that I think helps illustrate the power of engagement is from the CEO of Zoom, actually, is Eric Yoon, I think is the pronunciation, I'm not sure. So Eric is well known for kind of being the very approachable CEO who knows the product inside and out and is very detail-oriented, understands kind of the back end and the front end and the entire business. And so I like this, you know, I called it the value of social engagement in 4 acts. And so I'll walk through it here quickly. So in this first example, you're seeing kind of an unprompted message that's like seemingly going nowhere, just kind of noise. Someone says like, you know, video chat's not good, it sucks. And then someone says like, yeah, it's still not really good. But then you get kind of an unprompted response from Eric, the CEO of the most widely used video messaging service, Zoom, saying, I'm the CEO, we actually have a really good Net Promoter Score, lots of good, happy users. Tell me what you think, like what's wrong, and I'll go fix it, right? So again, has established that this person's not malicious, probably could go to a constructive place. He's not a troll or anything. So the person responds with some really constructive feedback and says, here's what I'm hoping you know, to get out of Zoom. So the feedback is shared with the CEO. The CEO then goes and says, you know what? This makes a ton of sense. I'm going to get this feature added into the next release. And there you have it. The CEO gets a message from a random person on Twitter, and who's, you know, part of, you know, the person using the product on a day-to-day basis, takes an action based on what he's hearing. And then you get kind of what I think is the value in all this, is this unprompted consumer validation. It's like other people are chiming in saying, wow, this is a great addition. Like, thank you for taking the time to go and address that, you know, very specific feedback. it's just cool to see that, you know, a CEO of a major global business will still take the time to value the community that he's a part of and value the kind of feedback that he's getting from his audience and take some action. All right, home stretch. I'm gonna let Maddie take us to the finish line here.
I got 2 more tips in our top 10 list. Okay, so number 9 is refine your approach. This just gets at the fact that social media can kind of be hard to get the hang of. A lot of us on this call right now work in social media, and it's not something that we just learned in a day. We learned it through trial and error, time, studying it, etc. So I want our colleagues and senior leaders to just accept that it will be something that they learn as they go and refine as they go, and it's something that develops over time. Social media platforms also change all the time. So just when you think you might have the hang of LinkedIn and using your feed to do occasional posts, LinkedIn might come out with LinkedIn stories, and suddenly you have a senior leader wondering if they should be posting stories to LinkedIn. So that's just an example of how these platforms evolve, and so our strategies and our goals should keep up with that. It should be a continually learning experience that we improve over time. And I wanted to include an example of kind of that evolution from Justin Adams, our former managing director of lands. I used to help him with his Twitter handle, so this is a handle near and dear to my heart. And I included kind of, this is like the before and after. The before is his first tweet. This was when we were all just basic Twitter users. Maybe we'd get a hashtag in there, but we probably wouldn't punctuate it, and we'd definitely not add photos or links, just like basic tweets. That was back in 2014, and then Justin said, you know what, I think there's something to this Twitter thing, and he asked marketing for some assistance and coaching, and it was something that he just committed to and tried to figure out the best balance of his time, and suddenly here he is, and this is present day, sharing really wonderful on-the-ground photos of him and his colleagues. He's using hashtags and emojis and working in messaging into his tweet. So it's just very cool to see people being willing to evolve the platform and learn and grow. And he is one of my prime examples of someone who just ran with it over time. So he needed that coaching and that assistance and committed to it. And he's obviously left, but he's continued to maintain this Twitter handle and this following that he worked so hard to build while at TNC. So our final tip is number 10, prepare for big moments. So we've talked a lot about like day-to-day tweeting and ideas for content that you could share here and there as you go, personal life anecdotes or sharing articles you're reading. This tip is all about preparing for those big moments and planning for them in your senior leader's calendar. So that could mean a speaking engagement that they have on the calendar, a conference they're attending, maybe they're expecting a publication or a report that they worked on, a quote in the media that they're anticipating, a television interview, those kinds of things, identifying those key opportunities in the calendar that you can really leverage for social engagement. So it's sort of like those peaks in your use of Twitter. You know, you've got your daily use, and then you peak with some of these key moments to get the most bang for your buck. So I think as marketing staff, we could help our senior leaders identify some of those moments in their calendar and kind of coach them, do some research. What are the event hashtags that people are using? I often find there are several. Hashtag Davos, hashtag WEF, hashtag Davos 2020. Which one is the best one to use? That's something where we could do some of that research ahead of time, even craft some of these posts, and just to get the most out of that type of visibility and that type of moment on their calendar. And so 2 examples here. Inger Anderson is with UNEP, and I can guarantee you she had help with this tweet. It's just too good. So she's woven in some of her key messaging in a really digestible way. It's not a long run-on sentence. She's leveraged the handle of the group that's hosting, the event hashtag, and attached kind of that carousel of photos rather than just one of her. So I think she did a really nice job of making the most out of this event and all in one tweet. So I think that's fantastic. And then the other example we have up here is from Antonio Gutierrez with UN. He was attending Davos, and I think I've seen a lot. I know I've seen a lot of tweets of people like, "I'm here in Davos." Like he's followed it up with what's his message for the week. What is he trying to get out of the event? He's got some urgency and passion behind that message too. So again, he's making the most of a big moment on his calendar by getting some of his key messages out and key messages of his organization. So, to recap, 10 steps to social leadership. It's easy. It's only 10. And really, it's just about establishing your profile, making sure it's optimized, learning the lay of the land, getting ideas from others, and then just jumping into the social pool and having fun with it and evolving it over time, refining your approach. And so that's what we got for you.
And we have gotten a few requests and questions from those of you in the field asking for guidance around what their state director or other leader should be doing in social. So certainly happy to help kind of unpack these 10 steps. So much of it, as we've talked about, requires a very personal touch. So I don't think there's kind of a blanket checklist that we could really give people. Once we have this, it's really digging in and getting into some specifics. But certainly happy to work with you all in building this out.
Yes, Elizabeth, we'll definitely make this slide deck available. We're recording the Zoom, but we'll also post the slide deck. And if it's helpful, Matt and I have brainstormed about turning it into a cheat sheet format, if that's useful, whether it's for you as a marketing person or if it's something you actually want to hand a senior leader, that could be something we explore also. And I know I'm just going to swing back to another question. Misty Edgecombe asked about the right balance. Is there a recommended ratio between personal and professional anecdotes in Twitter? I don't have a specific percentage, Misty, but I think we touched on that a little bit. A slice into your personal life is so valuable, and it makes you human, and it makes you not just a Twitter handle. It makes you connect with the person behind the Twitter handle. So I would for sure try to weave that in, and it's even better if that personal anecdote sort of touches on your work. So I know Misty works with the cities program, and if Latrice is sharing something about her kids in the city or in a city park, you've kind of married the two. So I think that's always something that's nice to shoot for. Cool. Okay, cheat sheet. I will deliver on that promise. Cool. Give you one more second. Any final questions or comments? You guys are all doing great work. I know Matt and I have had a few conversations recently with some of the folks on the line about helping your state director. So I would love to continue the conversation, and if you're learning things through that type of partnership, please let us know, and we can continue to refine the cheat sheet or the advice that we give folks.